Hello everybody, and welcome back to another deck profile. Today we're going to be taking a look at Ahri. Ahri was a really interesting deck from set 1 that very much had a lot of hype in the community, but unfortunately didn't quite put up the results at Houston. And so for today's video, we're taking the cards from Spiritforged, and we're going to be putting it in Ahri and putting it together. It's the deck that you guys voted on, so I did my best with this. I will say you are fighting uphill a little bit in the current metagame, and you can imagine a very angry man standing at the top of that hill throwing axes in your face very hard down the hill. With that said in mind, we're doing our best with this one, and it should be able to give you a few results. I'm not sure if I'm confident enough that it will break the meta. The meta is constantly evolving at this stage as we move from regular Draven builds into Miracle Draven builds. But this deck has been playing pretty well into a lot of games that I've been playing, and I'm really happy to share this one with you. So, with that all said and done, I have one last thing. If you are enjoying the content that comes out of this channel, if you could hit that subscribe button, that would help me out a ton. Really grateful for all the support and the people that come back and watch these videos. And yeah, if you could just hit that button, it just helps us keep making the content and moving things forward. Right, with that all said and done, let's take a look at Ahri. So what we know about Ahri from set 1 is that we are a hold deck. We pretty much have a legend ability that gives all units -1 this turn if they move into a battlefield that we control. So we kind of want to stay in battlefields. The difficulty is actually doing that when it's so much more advantageous to be the attacker as opposed to the defender. So we're already kind of in a bit of an awkward spot. And what made Ahri difficult in set 1 is that all of the best cards that you wanted to make the Ahri deck work all cost power. So you had things like Defy, which is making a reappearance here. You had your chosen champion, Ahri Inquisitive. We had things like Rune Prison if we were playing it. We had Charm. So there's a lot of power cost being spent, and we didn't really have ways to generate the extra resources. So we'd eventually end up falling behind and then just getting run over by something like Kai'Sa that was just nuking all of our stuff from orbit. So what we've done with set 2 is we've got access to the gold mechanic. So gold is when you have it, it comes into play exhausted. And then at the start of your turn, you can ready it, and you can basically destroy it and get a power of any color. So we can actually start using that to pay for some of our better cards in Ahri without de-ramping ourselves, which actually makes this deck quite interesting. We're going to start off with the battlefields, and then we're going to run into the main deck. One of the best battlefields for Ahri is the Dreaming Tree. Every time you play a spell on a friendly unit here, you get to draw a card. This just says you have to choose a unit. The spell doesn't have to resolve. So if your opponent goes ahead and defies that, you can basically still get your card draw. This is really powerful, and it keeps your engine flowing, and it keeps us with lots of cards. We play lots of combat tricks, and because of the way that Ahri works is we're getting a lot more value out of our tricks than our opponent's getting out of theirs. So in a head-to-head tricks fight, we should be winning those, and Dreaming Tree just helps that keeps that running. It is important to note that there are some decks in the format, such as Draven, that can use the Dreaming Tree quite effectively. So if you are seeing a lot of that in your local scene, you might want to consider moving away from the Dreaming Tree. It is still very strong for us, but there's always that minor issue that if you are playing into another deck that can play it just as well as you, do you really want to be on this battlefield? For all intents and purposes, every other matchup, I generally find the Dreaming Tree has been fantastic. It's just noticeable when they've got a bunch of one-cost cards that can give Assault, and I'm trying to remember the name of the exact card, and you've got things like Cleave. If they're still playing that, it gives them the ability to draw cards as well. So we just have to keep that in mind. Our next battlefield is the Targon's Peak. Very simple. If we conquer here, we get to ready 2 runes at the end of the turn. That's great. We want to play lots of spells, ideally in the opponent's turn. So we're going to be playing Targon's Peak. Again, nothing particularly out of the ordinary from what we're doing in set 1. But one of the new additions that we get to make, and that's for when we are 100% going first, is the Ravenbloom Conservatory. Now this battlefield is fantastic. When you defend here, reveal the top card of your main deck. If it's a spell, you put it into your hand, otherwise you recycle it. So anytime your opponent wants to attack into it, the Nine-Tailed Fox will give a -1. We'll flip over the top card of our deck. If it's a spell, and we play a lot of them, we just get to put that straight in our hands and then use it to protect our units and allow us to stay on the point. The absolute best card in the Ahri deck for set 1 was by far Ravenbloom Student. This is just a very simple 2-drop that says whenever you play a spell, give me +1 this turn. Ahri gets to play On Guard and Discipline. Both of these are very powerful green cards, or in the calm domain. Discipline is just a simple give a unit +2, draw a card. On Dreaming Tree, we're drawing 2. And On Guard is if we have a unit there alone, we give it +1, and if it's alone, we get another +1. And both of these on Dreaming Tree are very, very powerful. If we play this on Ravenbloom Student jumps up to 5 might, as it will give itself +1 as well, meaning you're pretty much taking whatever battlefield in the early stages of the game that you want. What I really like about Ravenbloom Student is that it's still a threat later in the game. The only issue is we get to play 3 of them, they're not chosen, and the amount of value that it can give you is a little bit limited. So, what if we could just play 3 bigger copies of that Ravenbloom Student? That also has Deflect. This is what was an excellent addition to what I generally think of as the all-star of the deck, Ravenbloom. We just have a much bigger one. And every time we're playing On Guard on this, we're getting an additional +1. We have a much higher, I say much higher, it's 2 might higher baseline, but we get really, really big bonuses from this, and this will allow us to effectively stack check our opponent. Our opponent's not going to be able to out-trick us in most circumstances. They would need to be trading a lot of cards, and one of my favorite things about Aurelia Fervent is that it has no power cost. So it fits very much into what we want to do with Ahri, where we want to be spending our power on great spells, but we just get to have a giant Ravenbloom Student that beats our opponent's face in and has Deflect if our opponent wants to interact with it. I'm a big fan of that. And coming back into some more of the new stuff from set 2. So I do want to make a point that when I was trying to build this deck, I went through so many different versions, and I was really struggling with that Draven matchup. And the frame of this deck is actually from one of the Chinese City Championships. However, it was built for a best-of-1 format. So I built up the side, I played around with it, I'm a big fan of this. And you can find decks that are performing in Chinese tournaments over on Riftbound Stats. I will include the link down below, so you can go check that out. It can be very, very useful as a tool to sort of give you ideas on what cards are performing well in winning decks and which cards are perhaps traps and not so good. Coming back to this, we are playing just an absolute boatload of tricks with things like Stupefy, we've got the On Guard, we've got the Discipline, and all of this feeds into making Ravenbloom and also Aurelia very, very big when they attack or defend. This is going to allow us to take a point and hold the points. When our opponent is trying to set up stuff in the base, we are looking to charm out their important units, slam them down. Our opponent's unit's going to get the -1 from our legend ability, and we're also getting pluses on our Ravenbloom Student if we're dragging them into a battlefield where we have that unit. Our chosen champion is Ahri Inquisitive. Ahri Inquisitive is very, very powerful. The biggest challenge it had in set 1 was that it dies to literally everything. However, in this deck, as your chosen champion, it is our preferred option. When I attack or defend, give an enemy unit here -2 to a minimum of 1. This is a huge brick wall for a lot of your opponent's options to attack in, especially early on in the game. Even in the mid stages when they're looking at potentially attacking with a 5 might unit, they attack into our Ahri Inquisitive. Our Inquisitive gives it -2, our Legend gives it -1, so they're attacking with -3 effectively, which is a significant difference. So I'm a fan of this one. We don't need to really deploy it early, but when we're looking for our late game holdout, we can go ahead and drop this down as extra insurance policy to make sure that we're going to be holding those points. To offset our power costs, we have a new addition to the deck. We have the Plundering Poro, which is when I conquer, I get a gold gear token exhausted. Very, very simple. We get that first conquer, which we have to help us do that. We have our On Guards, we have our Disciplines, get our gold, and then our gold can help pay for things like Ahri Inquisitive. If we are going to play it, it can help offset our costs for Defy or our Charmed plays. We got a lot of great things we can do with this. In fact, we are such a fan of gold, we're also playing the Card Sharp. Card Sharp in this deck is great because it only costs 3 energy. It has no power cost. It's 3 might unit. Pretty baseline stats. When you play me, each opponent may play a gold gear token exhausted. For each opponent who did, you play a gold gear token exhausted. The cool thing with this is that even if our opponent takes the gold, we get 2 gold, and that is going to pay for a lot of our power costs through the game. If our opponent chooses not to, even if we just get 1 power worth of effect out of this, we've effectively paid for itself. In that sense, it's saved us a rune, it's given us a body that can score, and it's also got 3 might, so it'll walk over your opponent's 2 might units, a lot of their utility options in the early stages of the game. We also have, from set 2, a card that I have been gagging to get into a deck, Jaina Savior. Jaina Savior is a reaction unit, which is kind of one of a kind at the moment. We do have a few hidden allies, but this one is very much, you can play it any time before spells and abilities resolve to a battlefield, including to a battlefield you control. So you can play it to base. When you play me, heal your units here, then move an enemy unit from here to its base. So while we're holding, if our opponent charges in, we do some tricks, our opponent gets a little bit of the upper hand in the stat numbers, we can just slam down a Jaina, push them back. If our opponent tries to play removal and they play something like Falling Star, we've got a trick to stop our unit from dying, and then they go ahead to play Stupefy, we can react with the Jaina, heal the damage off, and then we can save our unit. It's a very, very flexible card. For free energy, you basically get Fight or Flight in colors that should not have Fight or Flight. And this is a great panic button to press against a lot of decks that are trying to aggressively shove at you with Accelerate units, so things like Darius. If it comes swinging out of nowhere and they have the cleave, so it comes in at 10, we can just go ahead and push him away and carry on and get our 3 points from that effectively. Jaina is a really, really good card. Again, one of the biggest drawbacks is that it costs a power, and if you want to use the effect to push units away, you need to control the battlefield. So we need to be able to conquer, and then we want to hold. So we kind of end up in that situation where a lot of decks want to do one or the other. They're not really equipped to do both. We are trying to do both. We want to take a battlefield, and then we're trying to sit on it and hold it for as long as possible. And Jaina fits very much into that strategy. We're also taking Thonk. I hate the name of this card because I keep forgetting how to spell it whenever I'm trying to search for it in Piltover Archive. But this is an action spell, so you can play it in your turn or during showdowns. It has a repeat option, so you can pay the additional cost, which is just 2 energy, to play the effect twice. You get to stun an attacking unit. It's basically Rune Prison without a power cost. The biggest difference is that it only stuns attacking units. If we do repeat this, unfortunately, it does not give additional might to Ravenbloom. That's actually in the FAQ, and they very much call out Ravenbloom by name. But being able to stun an opponent's big push at you can buy you another turn, and that is effectively another point. It also is very, very effective against cards like Ride the Wind, because a stunned unit can't come back in if your opponent's got a way to ready it. So this is another really good one for when we don't have enough tricks to actually win the combat. We can just go ahead and stall our opponent. We are also playing 2 copies of Consult the Past. We get to hide this. We have gold now, so we're quite happy to go ahead and just pay our gold to hide Consult the Past. Gives us more cards, gives Ravenbloom Student a +1, gives us more options. It's just generally a really solid card in blue. Anytime you can cheat the power cost, it's worth it. It's very hard to justify this card when you actually have to fairly pay power costs for it. And 4 is just a very unreasonable rate for 2 cards, even at reaction speed. So this is a great card because of our gold, and I'm always happy to set this next to a Ravenbloom Student as quickly as possible. At the very least, it can react to our opponent's removal spell and give us +1, and then we might draw something to get our Ravenbloom just out of range. On our top end, for allowing us to take the game back if our opponent does manage to wrestle control from us, we have 3 copies of the Thousand-Tailed Watcher. It's just a great card. We can accelerate it out. It has 7 might. It reduces all enemy units by 3 might this turn to a minimum of 1, and this will pretty much run over battlefields. It's especially brutal into opponents that are trying to stack up multiple units, which you will notice that the Miracle Draven deck is playing multiple copies of Raza, and this could be a great way to shrink that whole board down and allow you to start getting over the top of multiple units. And last but not least, I appreciate I'm saying that when there's a Clockwork Guardian we haven't talked about, but in fact, I don't think it's Clockwork. It's Clockwork Keeper, sorry, yeah. Which is just a 2 might unit, which costs 2. We can also pay the green to draw a card. We can also pay a gold. Not a fan of paying that green very often, but in the later stages of the game when you draw this and you just need to get deeper in your deck, it will do. It's just basically a great card to start off with. So now let's go again. Last but not least, in the main deck, we're taking a look at Time Warp. Time Warp has notoriously been fantastic at closing games when you can just get up to 5 points, and then we can go ahead and hold into our 6. We can Time Warp, and then we can Thousand-Tailed Watcher to get on our second turn the 8th point, or we can just hold from both points from 6 to 8, or we can just take one side from 7 to 8. And Time Warp is great at that, and because we've got ways of reducing the amount of power we're spending, we don't need to pay things like Tasty Feyfolk, which are much higher in the curve and kind of push the Ahri deck into more of a ramp strategy, which was just not really well performing in set 2 meta. we want to be going in a lot faster, and cards like Aurelia was just much more efficient at getting in with numbers that were challenging the opponent on those battlefields. And then Time Warp is still an excellent closer. So that's generally the main deck. When we come over to the side deck, this has had a bit of testing, and it does depend a little bit on where people settle in terms of Miracle Draven, regular Draven, how much Ezreal is going to be in the format. I think he's going to be quite popular. Fiora as well is another one. So I'm kind of a fan. We do see quite a bit of Kai'Sa in online tournaments at the moment. We also see a deck called Prison Victor or Prison Variants, which could be Lux is also another one, which is basically just a deck that plays like 39 removal spells, or rather 38 removal spells and a chosen champion, and then uses Victor to just make the units that will score all the points. Retreat can help save our important units. It's still great into all the red removal, so things like Falling Star or Piercing Light, Void Seeker. We're able to protect our important units, and we can also ramp up a rune for playing this as well, which makes it kind of a surprise when we can just suddenly then drop over a Watcher when our opponent wasn't expecting us to go from 5 to 8 on our following turn. It was strong in the Kai'Sa format, and it's also strong here. Speaking of that prison matchup, looking for ways to protect some of your upper end units, Guardian Angel is an option you can consider. It lets you keep the unit, which means the unit's likely to be able to score again, or it forces your opponent to spend 2 cards to kill one of your units, and then if you've got another way of protecting it, for example, things like Defy or just a combat trick, it can really help you start stacking up those points. It's just basically, we get to a point in that matchup where a lot of our combat tricks are kind of only existing just to stop some of the removal spells from dealing damage. Guardian Angel is very, very good into a lot more of their harder removal, so things like their Vengeance and stuff like that. So all around, pretty good card. We can put it on our Inquisitive. We're happy to put it on Aurelia. We can even just put it on Ravenbloom Student and not feel too bad about that either. Next up is a little bit spicier. I'm a fan of the Pickpocket. The Pickpocket is great in a meta where Ezreal or Miracle Draven are doing well, because you can kill a gear with a cost no more than 1. If you do, you can play a gold gear token Exhausted. It's also a free might for free, so good if we're going second. The Ezreal deck very much wants to get seals down, and it will dig aggressively through its deck in order to find those seals. This will offset all of their cool shots, which is going to give them all of their card advantage in the game. If we are eating our opponent's seals, we are contributing to not having to trash our own runes when we are, recycle our runes when we're playing our own cards, but we're also making them have to play the game more fairly. And this becomes a challenge, because every time they want to resolve a cool shot, they actually have to spend power. Those Razas that are coming in later in the game, you actually have to spend power. So being able to eat your opponent's seals with Pickpocket and get a unit that can score, very, very strong. We can also retreat and bring it back to hand and do it again. It's pretty good if our opponent's also playing Treasure Hoard as a battlefield, or they're playing a lot of gold in general. It's also surprisingly annoying into Azir when they're trying to have their Eye of the Herald, and you just eat it with Pickpocket, make a gold, your opponent kind of cries, because that is a massive setback to them. And then also on the gear-hating front, the Adaptatron. I'm not sure about this one. I'm a fan of Adaptatron in any deck where you have great mobility. So if we're playing Aurelia, the Legend, or if we're playing Yasuo, or even potentially like First Mate, or things where we can just get this in on top of our opponent immediately, this is very, very powerful because it can eat our opponent's gear. So if we're playing against like an opponent's Ornn and they've got Spellsong, we can go ahead and eat the Spellsong off of the Ornn without actually targeting the Ornn. It eats seals. It can just, against Aurelia decks where they want to be moving in and out, you can eat their Guardian Angels, their Zhonya's Hourglasses, their Heart of Dark Ice. It basically puts them in a position where they don't want to leave a battlefield open, which can then make your follow-up attack more impactful. It's a pretty solid card. There's an argument to consider playing, I think his name is Rake, which is a free cost unit which costs 1 power, has 2 might, and just destroys a gear as soon as you play it. If they're a gear that you just have to answer immediately, that is also a consideration. We could also be considering in our side deck, if we think that's a little bit too spicy, an additional copy of Charmed is always pretty solid to think about there. We can also, when we take out our Time Warps, depending on the matchup. there's a lot we can do. We are in very, very good colors, and the key thing when you are making modifications to a deck like Ahri is knowing what the main weakness is, which is power costs. So we want to be very, very sure on what we're spending power. So in this case, Defy really has a big impact on the game. Charm can end a game like immediately on the spot. And then you'll notice like the rest of the things that we're spending power on is literally Thousand-Tailed Watcher, because it closes games, it wins games. Jaina as a panic button. This is kind of a flavored thing. If we were being really true to what I was saying, we could consider taking the Jainas out so we could reduce our power costs. But I think Jaina is actually very, very strong, and it's definitely worth testing. I do encourage you guys to play around with it a little bit. And then also Time Warp, because Time Warp wins the game for us. And our power costs are very much focused on our very, very big important plays, but we're not playing a lot of them. So this is going to mean that we are able to keep up in the energy economy so our opponent doesn't pull too far ahead as we keep panic hitting all of our, recycling all of our runes just to play all of our best spells. But that's going to be it. I will have links for the deck down below so you guys can go ahead and check this out yourself. You can go ahead and export it over to TCG Arena and try it out. You can play in weekly tournaments. There are a lot going on the internet. My personal favorite is the Thursday night fights. These are free tournaments being run. I'll include their Discord server link down below so you can go ahead and join in. Winner gets $20. It's not a lot, but you know, for a free tournament that's being run every Thursday evening, you can just win $20. You get to play. It is Spiritforged format, so come along, test this out. It's been a lot of fun. I struggled initially when trying to put Ahri together, and I was getting quite demotivated. It's why it took me a while to get this video out. And I finally settled in on something that feels pretty good, and I do enjoy this, especially getting to play around with cards like Ravenbloom Conservatory, or even just the Aurelia and seeing it outside of an Aurelia deck when you don't necessarily need to play it as a Protect the President card. It's just a giant Ravenbloom student. Ravenbloom student was very good. Bigger Ravenbloom student, even better. Very caveman way of looking at it, but it gets the job done. So we're going to wrap this up here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, if you want to see more great content, please hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you on board. We have another interview coming out in the very near future. Had some trouble editing with that one, so that one's a little bit more delayed, but we're hoping to get that one out very, very soon. And I've got other interviews lined up as well. Lastly, I will also be in Las Vegas by a random turn of chance. That was the regionals that I got into. Please come up and say hello if you've watched any of this stuff. Would love to meet you guys in person. Very much looking forward to competing and just having a good time and being on your side of the fence as opposed to actually working in the industry and organizing the events and working on all of that stuff. But yeah, for now, thank you so much for watching. We'll catch you next time. Cheers.